Thanks for tuning into the School Board Patriot podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Mandarin. Today, I will be having an interview with Steve Meisman, who is running for School Board District 1. We get into a little bit about who he is and where he comes from and why he's running. I hope you guys enjoy. Hello. Hi.
Finally.
We are here with Steve Meisman running for School Board District 1. I'm going to be interviewing him, asking him a few questions. I first want to start off and ask, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for school board.
Okay, well, my name is Steve Meisman. As you said, my pronoun is man, and I identify as a husband and a father. And the only privilege that I have came as a result of a lot of hard work and treating people fairly.
Yes.
So now that we're done making fun of the wokesters, a little bit about me. I've been married to my wife for 31 years. We're high school sweethearts. We have 2 kids. My son Wilson is 16. And my daughter Reagan is 11. They both go to Cypress Creek. Will goes to Cypress Creek High and Reagan goes to Cypress Creek Middle. He is just finishing up 10th grade and Reagan is finishing up 6th grade. My wife and I started an aerospace manufacturing business 21 years ago, I think it was. We've had a lot of success with it and it's been a lot of fun, and we're kind of half retired now, and we just do some stuff here and there as it comes in over the transom. I'm a self-taught manufacturing engineer. My father was a sharecropper, grew up in the Dust Bowl in Kansas, and became a United States Marine, then became a multidisciplinary engineer, and then became an entrepreneur. And so that was my upbringing, was the son of a Marine who was a compassionate Marine, a sweet Marine. He wasn't, and then nothing to me, there's not a bad Marine, but he was he was more tender. And then we were constantly going to auctions and I was being groomed to do business, even though I really didn't know what was going on. I was just paying attention to watching liquidation sales and federal bankruptcy auctions and whatnot. Graduated high school from Gulf High School, barely. And then of course my wife she graduated Gulf High the year before me, Phi Theta Kappa, on her way she had been accepted into Auburn University's veterinary program when she was a junior in high school. So we are bookends on the opposite ends of the scale as far as academic and scholastics go. She's more of a professional student, and I have to learn everything the hard way. So here we are now. We have 6 acres in Zephyr Hills. We've lived here for 12 years. Our business is on our property, and we got the 2 kids. We got a dog, Dagny over there. She's a 120-pound Borbal. And she'll probably make her presence known, I'm sure, at some point here. She's in my office with me today. So that's kind of our story. I'm 51. My wife is 29. And, we just sort of, we put our kids, we homeschooled our kids in classical education, a magnificent online school called Freedom Project Academy, because we were basically refugees from Common Core. Governor Scott stupidly accepted that and took the money and set us on a course for failure, in my opinion. And this is in the early days. I was researching it, and there was this Dr. Duke Pesto and Mary Black were doing these videos, and I was able to go on YouTube and learn about this and how destructive it was going to be, the analytics that they were performing on the kids, and how it was not intended to advance the kids' rigorous knowledge, but it was designed to categorize the kids. So instead of letting kids just be kids and letting them sort of blossom into whatever their destiny was, whatever their aptitude would take them to. We're going to evaluate kids, and we're going to determine which ones are going to be the engineers, and which ones are going to arrange flowers, and which ones are going to pack boxes, and which ones will be doctors and whatnot, on a pre-programmed plan, and which is very Marxist. And these are the things that got me on the path to understanding and studying cultural Marxism. It really has just been a hobby of mine since I was in my 20s. As an 8th grader, I'm sitting listening to Rush Limbaugh, recording the shows on my dual cassette deck, and then feverishly listening to them when I would get home, and then start the whole process over again, record over the same tape and wear them out. And it just became something of a real passion that I wanted to understand. My dad used to tell me about the Marines on Mount Suribachi in Iwo Jima, and what it took and what they went through to capture that important objective. And the picture, I'm sure everyone's seen the picture of the Marines on top of Mount Suribachi raising the flag. The stories and the visuals really just captivated me, and then I began to try to study the founders, and reading the Declaration and what those men were doing when they signed it, and how they were all destitute when it was done. When the war was over and the revolution was over, these men had lost their children, they had lost their wives. Because some of the founders' children had been conscripted into the British Navy. And so there was so much pain and sacrifice that these men went through, and their families too. And then, to understand things like only 12% of the population participated in the Revolutionary War. It only takes about 10 to 15% of a population to change an entire society. So, and it doesn't have to be, by the way, it doesn't have to be through war, because right now we're seeing our society changing with a teeny percent of social justice warriors practicing cultural Marxism that they learned in the university system. But I decided I needed to learn about this and understand, especially for my kids, because my son, about 3 years ago, he'd been homeschooled his whole life, and we live pretty rurally. So there's not kids down the street, there's not kids on the block. And despite our best efforts of hauling him to Tampa 3 times a week for lacrosse practice, he just wasn't able to bond with the kids. So he was losing his mind. And we just said, you know what, let's put you in public school. And my buddy told me about that Cypress Creek had an engineering program. Wilson was desperate. He wanted to be an engineer, just like his dad and his grandfather and his great grandfather. So it was a big deal to him. And he has a real sense of tradition too. And math comes to him like breathing air. He's just a real whiz with it. So we put him in public school, and it didn't take long for us to start experiencing the effects of cultural Marxism, which, I'll make sure people understand when I use that term, I'm talking about where Marx had created the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels. That was about class warfare and causing one class to want to envy another class, right? In the 1920s, Antonio Gramsci at the Frankfurt School in Germany, he took another look at this and said, this is not working well enough. We have a better way. What we're going to do is take people that look like one group, and we're going to cause them to hate the rich. And so again, envy, but it's racial envy, right? And then so he could further break down these groups. And the important thing is none of these groups get too big. The idea is to have several disparate groups that you can cause first of all, within the group. To build the group, you have to strip the individual of their identity and cause them to take on the identity of the group. Now, which is a cult effectively, right? So now you build the group that way, and then you build another group that looks a different way, right? And then you build another group that looks a different way. And by then at some point, you can cause these groups to sort of unite in a loose fashion and cause political change, or just rise up, pitchforks and torches, and go get the rich guy on the hill. Well, this envy is incredibly destructive, but Howard Marcuse successfully exported that as he was fleeing the Nazis, and he brought it from Germany to America, and great success. He went to Columbia University, and then he also went over to the West Coast and had great success there. Then Saul Alinsky comes along and writes Rules for Radicals, and he makes it cool to be a revolutionary, right? Because you got to remember, Marx's manifesto, it was a call to bloody revolution. This was not about equality. It was not about fairness. It was about bloody revolution. He just didn't have, Gramsci beat him. He took a magnifying glass to what Marx had created, right? Dramatically expanded it. So now classism becomes racism. And then you've got Saul Alinsky making it glamorous and fun. I mean, the guy, Andrew Breitbart, called him infuriatingly hilarious. Then you bring Howard Zinn into the mix. And Zinn hates the Constitution, hates the American founding, and he's a racist, but he hates really any race, but he's destructive towards the minority races, and he's trying to exploit them to destroy the majority races, right? He's really an anarchist, in my opinion. But Zinn is the guy that wrote the People's History. And that was the bastardization of everything good about America. Our goodness was turned against us. And yes, America's made mistakes. If you ever had the chance to read Bill Bennett's America, the Last Best Hope, volumes 1, 2, and 3, it is 100 hours of the best reading you'll get. It's the story of America, the good and the bad, warts and all, right? So we did make mistakes as a country, as a society. But de Tocqueville noticed that we are critical of ourselves. Our self-analysis is what makes us superior. And of course, our freedom, right? So our freedom to fail, analyze what we've done wrong, and then fix it, do better, right? So these are the things that contributed to me looking at this whole school board thing. And then comes, I think I sent you some of these things that early on that yes. Really, yeah. And you can feel free to comment on these things at any point.
So your son, when he went back to school, he experienced some of these things that, did he notice a difference in the way that?
Yeah. So yeah, he knows what he's looking for.
Yes, that's the thing though. I can say about maybe a year and a half ago, I had no idea that these things were actually put into place. The Marxist, I never even knew what that was, and up until recently. So I feel like it's very important to have someone up there that understands and knows what to look for when it comes to these things, because you said that just like with the Common Core, there are certain school members now that are okay with whatever the state is considering, okay to put into education, yet they don't know what to look for. They're just gonna let it happen, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I think this is not just throughout the state. Corcoran's group up there, which I don't have an issue with Corcoran, but Richard Corcoran he's no longer there, but he created what we're experiencing now. But it's also endemic through the schools. Now, I don't think that all the teachers are bad actors.
No,
there are bad actors, but I think it's a very small, loud minority. I think that there's also a lot of teachers that don't know any better.
Yeah.
Because most people, look, I had to learn this myself. Now, when I was a kid, when we were in high school 18 years ago, right? We spent a week on World War II. We spent, at least a week on the Revolution. We spent some time on the French Revolution, but I really had to teach myself the details of all these things. Exactly. Because I thought I had heard people comparing the American Revolution to the French Revolution, and I didn't understand it. Well, I realized now that's preposterous. There's the righteousness of our revolution and the chaos of the French Revolution It's just totally disconnected.
Mhm.
But these are things that I had to go and seek. Now, this is because I'm curious. I'm just very curious about these things, and the
Yes.
history is very important to me. Most people don't, and that's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're out living their lives, having fun. I'm just reading, right?
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time working alone. Before we had any employees, we couldn't afford them. So I would buy audiobooks and play them in the building while I'm running a 5-axis machine or doing something else,
Yeah.
So I spent years literally alone, just listening and getting information, or reading. So as I look in the schools, like for example, I spent 5 weeks teaching. 3 months ago was when I started, right? And we were in a meeting with my daughter's principal, vice principal, and her English language or ELA teachers, right? And they were with the meeting. Ostensibly, we didn't know why we're there. We thought Reagan was in trouble or there was a problem. And we're like, okay, so we're there. And the teacher was so happy. She slid a piece of paper across to the table to us, like almost ceremoniously. And it was Reagan's readings course. And she's 6th grade, but she's reading at an 11th grade level, right? And they are just blown away. They're so happy, And we were kind of nonplussed because the stuff that they're reading is just so uninteresting, and a lot of it is environmentalism. That I mean, I can just show you one of the Reagan's quizzes where it talks about how you can save some ridiculous amount of water if you would take, instead of taking a half an hour shower, take an 8-minute shower. Who takes a half an hour shower on a regular basis? I mean, this is just preposterous, right? but before this, she was reading Homer, and the tragedies, right? And so this is as a 4th and 5th grader, right?
Yeah.
In classical, right? So when she comes into this environment, she there's no sentence diagramming. They stopped teaching spelling in 4th grade. And it's sight words. It's not phonetics or phonics. I mean, right? So when Reagan gets in, she's solving puzzles, cipher. She walked in the other day, and she was teamed up with 2 other kids. She had missed 2 weeks of school. She's actually missed about 3.5 months of school because she had MRSA. But she missed a lot of school recently and missed another couple weeks. She comes in, first minute into the classroom, she teams up with her 2 buddies there in the class, and they're working on a cipher. Well, the 2 girls that she's with, they don't have any idea. They're looking at this thing for 20 minutes. They can't figure it out. Reagan figures it out in 30 seconds and it's over with.
Yeah.
And it's just because she's had exposure. There's no reason these girls that she was teamed up with, that they couldn't do this too.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, they've been robbed by the school because their life is being wasted.
Yes.
They should have specific dedicated time that they're learning rigorous information and then go play.
Yes.
Right. And that's not what's happening. What I'm noticing, like, I'm jumping all over the place here, but one of the things that was happening in her advanced 6th grade math, right? Which all of the stuff she did in her 6th grade math class, she did in 3rd grade, right?
Yeah.
So or 2nd grade. So they're using number lines to calculate percentages and ratios. And I was just stunned, and tape measures as well, right? So you're supposed to calculate change off of using a tape measure, which obviously is an inch divided into 12 pieces instead of 10 pieces, but we're not going to get that complicated, right? I spent an hour and a half with just daddy-daughter time, and we had a blast learning ratios and fractions and how to do it the right way, the hard way.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that she would complain about. We would tuck her in and she'd be crying in bed. And we're like, what's going on, honey? I don't understand. And she said, well, I just feel like I'm losing my edge. Everything that they do at school is the easy way. And I'm used to doing it the hard way, right? So for example, multiplication, we're going to do ladder math, right? Which is addition to solve a multi, like a 3 times 3 digit times 3 digit problem.
Yeah.
So we're going to use ladder math to solve it with addition. We're not going to use multiplication to solve long division.
Yeah.
Right. These are the kinds of things that she's being confronted with. Drawing boxes and counting the Dorito chips in there, and this is how we're going to do long division. And the reason it was such a deal, because when I was in 4th grade, I actually went to a school that went up to 8th grade, and I was the fastest long division champion in the school. Nobody could come close to me. The chalk would smoke as I wrote on the board, right? And so it was an interesting claim to fame, because, as we all know, I was a horrible student, but I was awesome at math. And so they were like, I'm doing long division. And I'm like, great, show me. And they start drawing these boxes. And I'm like, this is not right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm like, that's Common Core. Okay.
Yep.
So these are the motivations, right? And the Marxism is something that really stunned me, because when the teacher was playing the videos, they played several videos, right?
Yes.
The first one that got my attention is when they were playing that Steve Cuts videos.
Yeah.
Would you have time to look at any of this?
Yes.
Did not floor. What was your impression of that?
It made me feel bad. It made me feel uncomfortable. I've seen that video before, and I was very shocked to see that they would be showing something like that in school. I feel like it's purposeful, like that they played something like that to make the children feel bad about, humanity. That's what I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly, anti-human, anti-Western,
yeah,
anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
That's the whole, the 5 videos that they played. First of all, they played them in the perfect sequence.
Yeah.
Now, interesting enough, Leah Mitchell showed me the state requirements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was 5 requirements, and this teacher who, I mean, look, I can't make excuses for him. He's practicing Marxism whether he knows it or not. Okay.
Yeah.
But he's from Poland, so he's got, solidarity, perestroika. He was there at the end of all that. He was a toddler, but still, I just don't see how he's got an excuse for not knowing anti-Western values when he sees them, right?
Yeah.
And anti-capitalism, right?
Yeah.
But the way that he had this latitude, by the way, he was able to choose each video and match it to the state requirement, right?
Yeah.
Now, how you match Steve Cuts videos, which the guy in the report did you have a chance to read the report?
No.
Yeah, I don't blame you, because it was pretty long. I understand. In the report, it goes into, he won an award from, it's the people that own MTV and Viacom, I believe it was. I think it was Viacom. It was one of these large leftist media organizations. And his award was given to him because of his ability to undermine capitalism, right? Well, obviously he's doing far more than, really, this is anti-humanism, right? We're comparing animals with people, reversing roles, right?
Yes.
And again, at the end of the first period, man, the only thing left is him on the heaps, the mountains of trash, and then the aliens come down and kill him.
Yeah.
How does this explain biology?
It doesn't.
That's what it's a biology class, right? Biology honors, no less, right? And then they go on to this bag of wind, Sir Richard Attenborough, right? And he's just, it's one expert after another. There's no data, there's no statistics, right? All they do is talk about how capitalism's bad, capitalism's destroying everything. Well, if and you saw in Wilson's report where 8 of the 10 most polluted rivers in the world are in communist or socialist countries throughout Indochina and Asia, and Africa, right? Where's the trash coming from, right? Where's the pollution coming from?
Yeah.
Yet they'll show a video of a pond that's got a red tide explosion, which is just, it's algae. Now, it could be the result of pesticide. That's possible, right? But nonetheless, that is supposed to. It's a horrible visual. The optics are bad.
Yeah.
But why would you're going to draw the connection between Western expansionism or capitalism, right? So as the teacher goes through this, and presents this crap to our kids. And the only reason I saw it was because the power went out in the classroom and they couldn't play all the videos. So Wilson's sitting on the island, at the island in our kitchen, and I happen to just walk past him, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I just stop, and I'm going to do a drive-by here. Take a look. And I watch it for a minute, and I'm like, this is nonsense. What is this? And he says, oh yeah, there's 5 of these videos. He says, I didn't want you to see them because I knew you'd be mad.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's brainwashing.
It is. And when I brought it to the attention of the school, the first assistant principal I was working with, which God bless her, she tries. I got to give her credit. She tries. Okay. And she, I bring it to her attention. A week goes by, and I'm like, hey, you got any feedback? And she says, oh yeah, right. By the way, yeah. And so we're talking on the phone, and she says, oh yes, well, I spoke with the administrators here, and we feel that these videos are just satirical.
Oh.
Does this seem like sad? Yes, look at the reaction on your face.
Yes. No.
And I just said, hey, that's not going to go anywhere with me, right? You mean,
yes.
We've worked long enough together that I'm just not going to buy that. And she says, I figured not.
Yeah.
Well, so I followed up with an email saying, hey, can you please give me your impressions in an email?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she follows up and says that she felt that it was satirical, not administration.
Yeah.
So, there's a possibility that I'm misrecalling, but I don't think so, because when she said that, it stuck out in my mind big time. So, like I said, God bless her. Her and I work together today. I respect her enormously.
Mm-hmm.
She just helped us with another nonsense issue with another recalcitrant teacher at Cypress Creek. So, I really appreciate her very much. I have reservations about many of the other administrators at the school, and many of the teachers. But thank God, Wilson got a good crop of teachers this year. He only had one dud. The rest of them were, they worked with us, because the problem is that the kids were homeschooled for so long that they get sick. Their immune systems are still coming back,
Yeah.
And then with COVID and sending everyone home and suppressing everyone's immune system, now all of these bugs are roaring back, and kids like our kids are low-hanging fruit. So he's been quite sick this year, and they've all been just magnificent. I'm so happy with those teachers. I wish I could sit down and just have lunch with each one of them and learn tell me how I can help you from the board. Tell me how I can make it better, because I think that there's a lot of teachers who are being ignored. And there's so much knowledge, tribal knowledge, life experience that we could gain from the teachers' corps if we just look them in the eye and say, I really want to know. And one of your questions is, I'm sure, is going to be, why are you doing this, right?
Yes.
So when I like I said, I was doing that teaching for 5 months, and it was incredibly rewarding. It cost me a ton of money, because I shut my business down for 5 months or 5 weeks, and I made a whopping $80 a day as a substitute, right? Which that by itself is an issue. Why are we entrusting our kids to people who make $80 a day?
Yeah,
that's an issue. And as a sub, when I walked in, first of all, the kids are like, "Are you our new teacher? Are you our new teacher?" And I would just tell them, I'm your teacher until the regular teacher comes back. He was on paternity leave. So, and they're like, "You're a sub? Woohoo!" Right? Start singing from the rafters again, right? Because these kids have been alone for almost 2 months, and they have a permanent sub at the school. And God bless him. This guy is a nice guy, but he doesn't command the classroom.
Yeah.
And he doesn't teach engineering, and he doesn't understand the software that the kids are using. So basically, the kids their lives were wasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so this is, I guess, was the story that I began with the teacher who slid the paper across, expecting us to be beaming of our daughter's amazing accomplishment. um, that meeting wrapped up, and we were left there sitting with the principal and the vice principal, who we're very friendly with, and they were lamenting. We were just shooting the breeze, right? And they were lamenting that they don't have an engineering teacher still. I'm like, holy cow, how is this possible? And my wife punches me in the arm, says, "You should do it." I'm like, nobody wants me. I mean, I'm farthest from an academic, and I'm intimidated by children. So I don't think this is a good idea. And they're just looking at me stone faced, like, please say yes. This is what it felt like. And I said, "What, you want me to do this?" And I'm like, they're like, "Well, you'd be great at it, And I'm like, "Okay, give me a couple days and I'll think this over." And I just said to myself, yeah, it was civic obligation to give back. And these kids desperately need that. You can't let them languish anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, how are these kids going to have an appreciation for engineering? We import our engineers from India and Pakistan and China, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we have a massive deficit of homegrown engineers. Okay. And right now things aren't so good with China. And a lot of those guys come over here, we train them, and then they go back with our information, right? That's not good for us, right?
Nope.
So the idea that we have a group of people who are dedicated. So how do we have a committed group of people that are going to help build the roads, bridges, and structures, and airplanes, and cars, and everything else, right? If we don't cultivate this in our young people, and so I just felt I just have an obligation. I just got to do this. And also another half was selfish, because I'm very critical of teachers.
Yeah.
Because I've witnessed so much bad behavior with my kids. And I felt like I can't just bitch about these people without walking a mile in their shoes.
Yes.
So this was my opportunity. And I had been successfully talking myself out of running for school board for about a year at that point. So I figured I was home free. I'm probably going to be able to weasel my way out of this, hopefully. So I took the gig, and I went through the training, became an official substitute teacher with badge and all that stuff. And that training is we could have 2 shows just on the ridiculousness of that training. Now, I'm not going to indict ESS, because I think the women that run ESS are awesome. They're very good. They're very good at bringing you into the fold and helping you become trained, helping you work things out. And the lady that runs it, especially, is I really appreciate her. She's got a great point of view.
So who's in charge of creating the training?
That would be ESS corporate.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very woke.
Oh.
Like you can't. I mean, you should never touch a kid, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they have these things like it's difficult to basically anything that would have been considered a reasonable, wholesome relationship between an adult teacher and a kid 25 years ago is frowned upon now. And so where you try to have personal relationships with the kids to try and learn about them, like, so you find a way to make it into that little skull full of mush and try to teach them, try to build them, right? That's virtually impossible based upon the training that they offer. And it's also dumbed down enormously. Again, these are people that they're working for less than $10 an hour effectively. Okay. So nothing wrong, God bless them. But at the same point, we should be attracting better talent. We should be able to attract people who can teach, right? The county saves a colossal amount of money, though. There's 700 plus substitute teachers in the county right now, and that's not enough. They still need more. Wow. Right? They still run out. Okay, but they're paying them $80 a day, $10 an hour a first year teacher makes 1850 an hour, right? So they're saving about 40% off the top, just in that, because they're not putting a real teacher in, they're putting a sub in, right?
Yeah.
And obviously most subs don't come from my background. They're usually in their 20s. But this is not to take away from, because a lot of these subs do it out of love. They want to help the kids. But a lot, that when you got 700 of them plus, there's going to be plenty of these people that can't handle it. And this class was 45. My average class was 45 kids.
Yeah.
I concluded that is unteachable, especially you've got seventh graders, as they're transitioning from adolescence to teenhood, and they're very impulsive. So you've got to what I found was play with them. Let's have a playful moment, and they'll give you their attention, right? And they'll be comfortable, so that then you can impart knowledge, right? Or at least just get them to be quiet, right? Because and with 45 kids, right? So there's 6 kids at whatever 8 tables, around the room, and somebody over here starts yapping. So you're like, Johnny, pipe down, right? You got 3 seconds, and then the rest of it erupts into playing and talking and phones out and throwing paper airplanes. And I'm not exaggerating. Okay,
No,
3 seconds.
Yeah.
You have 3 seconds, and the other 44 are swinging from the rafters, right? So obviously you have to dominate a little bit there.
Yeah.
But you also have to have rapport, and it takes a couple of weeks. It took a couple of weeks for me to earn the respect of the kids, and I really, so many of them touch your heart, and you're so impressed with them, because they had no interest in. A lot of them are just doing this because they got stuck there.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's class size limits for core classes. So engineering, it's a dumping ground.
Yeah.
That's what I found. At least I had 191 kids. When I took over the class, half of them were failing, with in the 20s. Their score, their grade was in the 20s. And over that 5 weeks, I brought them at 108 had an A. Most of those was 100% A. 53 of them were B. Only 27 failed the class.
Oh, okay.
So I turned that thing around, but the kids turned it around, right? Because I was able to work with them and get them to recognize the value of their work, right? It's not a matter of, sit down, Johnny, get back to work. No, right? It's what's the accomplishment, right? Turning this, at the end of the class, I was lucky enough to borrow a 3D printer from Nathan Baker, who's the director of the engineering program at the high school. I grabbed the 3D printer from him, and I was able to teach the kids a much more robust software package. And some of the kids, I mean, there was some of the kids that they just did 0, right? But they still got a D. Are you aware of that?
No.
If it's an elective, you cannot fail an elective.
Oh,
not
no,
possible.
I was not aware of that.
Yep, I can't tell you how many times I would key in a 0 for a kid. They just didn't do the assignment, and after repeated prompting, or I'll do it with you. I'll sit down. We can have academic lunch, whatever. They just wouldn't do anything. I think they knew the secret, right?
Yeah.
But I would key in a 0, and I would come back to post the grades, and it would be a 59.
Oh, okay.
It's just stunning, right?
Yeah.
And this is the county padding their numbers. That's all this is. Okay. And when I was in school, again, back in the Stone Ages, summer school was like 10 weeks. I mean, you lost your summer, right? So I had to take algebra in summer school because I had a teacher I couldn't identify with, and because I was sitting next to a kid that made fun of him, I got lumped in. And so Mr. Gonzalez just hated me, and I didn't put up a fight. I'm like, fine, whatever. And I got an 8% in algebra, took it in summer school, finished the book 3 weeks early, got a 95 from this teacher. His name was Mr. Fagan. What a great guy. but he connected with me.
Yeah.
And lessons learned, right? And that's what I was trying to do. I had a couple of students that they'd given up. They were just, they were radical or rowdy boys, a little bit, rough and tumble, right? But I just connected with them. I said, hey, you can't do that. Number one, you're done with that, right? So look, I can tolerate some things, not that. So that's over. And then, after a couple of days, shockingly, these boys separated themselves. I didn't have to separate them. They separated themselves. And I had zero expectation that these boys would come through in any way. All of them ended up passing.
Nice.
Now, they weren't flying colors.
No.
They passed, right? They passed. And these are boys that have mechanical inclination. They're not going to be engineers, but they might be mechanics.
Yeah.
They might be a construction worker, or maybe someone who can interpret drawings. They had a mechanical inclination, and I was able to connect enough to at least expose them to what they can be doing. Anyway, we're getting this is way, way personal. As far as all this stuff reflects on the board at the district level, if I just had one simple way to describe it, I want to take 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle and turn it into a 100-piece jigsaw puzzle. The bureaucracy exists to do one thing, to promote the bureaucracy. Right? So, it doesn't have to be populated with evil monsters. Okay, these are just people they're just creatures of the bureaucracy. This is what they've always known.
Yes.
They were taught this in school. Then they have their skills refined within the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So I trust that they're not irredeemable. I trust that they can be retrained to do something that's less grand, right?
Yes.
Because as Jim was saying in your last interview recently, that the bureaucracy has grown enormously. The county is, I think that Superintendent Browning started out with 18 assistants, and now he's got over 30. That's a stunning thing, right? To me, the bureaucracy should not have to scale with the the bureaucracy should not have to scale with the organization that it manages. If you've designed your systems correctly, it should just be rubber stamp. So if you can make a school run, the example I like is Nuclear Corporation of America. These people were nuclear engineers, but they came up with a way that you could pour steel in a plant that was much smaller. So throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Bethlehem Steel just exploded throughout the Rust Belt, right? Plants all over the place. They had several mills where they could pour gobs of steel, grossly inefficient. They had so many managers that they built when they built their main headquarters, it was in the shape of a crucifix, so that they could have enough corner offices for all of their executives.
Nice.
Okay. so 4 corners isn't enough.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to have 8 corners. And it's 6 stories high. So this gives you an example of the gross inefficiency, but they didn't have to, because the automotive industry was feeding them gobs of money. They didn't have to compete. It was not difficult. Didn't matter how adversarial the relationship was with the steel union, because there was always plenty of money. So they could threat to strike, and management was sympathetic to the union anyway, so they just paid them more. Nucor had a different idea. They decided, we're going to create mini mills, and we're not putting it in the Rust Belt. We're going to put it out in the Corn Belt. So we're going to put a mill in a cornfield. We're going to hire a farmer, and when he comes out, he's going to get up at 4 a.m. and by noon, he'll, instead of plowing the 40 acres of land, he'll have poured 40 tons of steel. Right? And the theory was no unions. We'll hire 5. We'll work them like 10 and pay them like 7. Right? So and it's not hard for these farmers to dramatically outproduce their unionized brethren throughout New England, right? And the loyalty they had from their employees they would literally chase the union organizers out of the plant.
Nice.
One of the stories that was really touching was this: one of the employees had 9 children.
Mm-hmm.
6 of his kids had already gone to school. Well, the company pays for in all of their children's college education, the whole thing, tuition, books, labs, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy's like, I got 9 kids. I don't expect you to put the remaining 3 through school. And the owner of the company says, what are you talking about? You're one of us. That's just what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you'll have another kid. Right. So the loyalty the mutual loyalty that they had from management to the employees, there was never adversity.
So, so do you think that the board can develop some like a system that way?
I think that, as I understand it, the teachers union is in Pasco County because 50% plus 1 teachers joined it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can pay them what they're worth, right? Which I need to do some more research, but to me, at a minimum, it needs to be at least 10 grand more across the board increase in pay for all teachers. We rank 55th out of 63 counties in the state. Now that there's actually 75 school districts, but some of those are attached to universities. They're not really public schools, right? But nonetheless, out of that, we're in the bottom 15%, roughly 20% on a good day, right? So we need to be in the top 5%, and there's no excuse for it. Our budget is $1.5 billion, right? So my friend Megan Harding, I mean, I really appreciate her. She's made mistakes, but I still appreciate her. Every time I push on her about this, because we have friendly banter, she tells me, well, the state is requiring, it's got all these requirements, mandates. And I said, I'm sorry, are these funded or not? She says, well, they used to be funded, but now a lot of them are unfunded. Well, then why aren't we pushing back on the state? Now, I mean, we don't have to start with lawsuits, but we can at least do some public relations and say, the state of Florida is forcing us to spend our money the way we don't want to.
Yeah.
Right. And apparently it's like half the budget.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think much of this is destructive.
Yep.
For example, why are we providing, okay, this is going to be controversial, but think this through. Okay. When I was teaching, I would get 1 to 3 students every single day coming up to me and say, oh, I have to go talk to the counselor. Now, when I was in high school, the counselor was the guidance counselor. And this person helped you figure out what career you're going into, how to apply to colleges, that kind of thing, right?
Yes.
No, these people are mental health people.
Yep.
Right. And they're not trained psychologists. They're not, I mean, they probably got some certificate of some kind. And I'm not here to disperse them, besmirch them. But the reality is they're performing a task that increases drama in the classroom.
Yes.
And whenever there's 2 of them full time at Cypress Creek Middle, and it's a revolving door. There's always a waiting room full of kids that have to talk to the counselor.
Yeah.
Now, look, there are kids in need, but when I was in school, those needs were met by the parents.
Yes.
Okay. And if there was an abuse situation, somebody does pick up on it, because that kid's going to interact with at least a dozen adults during the day at school, and somebody's going to pick up on it. There's going to be some justification to call the sheriff or the Department of Families. There is help, right? I got into a conversation with a principal the other day, and we have friendly banter, and we know we don't agree on a lot of things, okay? But God bless him, he's honest with me, right? And so he's telling me And I'm just like, why do we have these full-time counselors here? All of the drama that is created by this is destructive.
Yes.
Well, the answer was, some kids don't have the access to this stuff at home. And I'm like, what about mom and dad?
Yeah.
Well, some kids don't want to talk to mom and dad. Oh, so you're the parent now.
Yeah.
You're okay with supplanting a parent.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I think that it's child abuse
Yeah.
to indoctrinate a kid, for a parent to indoctrinate a kid and talk them into becoming some LGBTQ WTF. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's abusive.
Yes.
However, I'm not going to tell them what to do.
Exactly.
And they damn sure better not try to tell me how to raise my kid.
Mhm.
Right. Well, why is it okay for the school to just circumvent the parent?
Yeah.
Right. Because this, and by the way, right, the recruiting, which is what LGBT is all about in schools, is recruiting. They're sexualizing children.
Yeah.
The school should not be participating in it, even though the school completely participates in it, or at least allows it to occur. Right. I'm not saying that the school itself is into grooming,
No.
but grooming is happening
Yes.
by some adults. Right.
Yes.
The idea that they're so bold as to circumvent the parent, I think, is unacceptable.
Mhm.
The whole idea, if we only save one person, at what cost? At what?
Yes.
I'm not talking about dollars. I'm talking about
Yes.
we're complicating a kid's life unnecessarily. And I never had the confusion with gender or sexuality, so I can't identify necessarily. However, I've read a lot about it. And unless there's a chromosomal problem, the rest of it is just gender dysphoria.
Yep.
So at that point, they need our pity and our and treatment, but they certainly don't need everyone around them celebrating the bizarreness of this idea and this lifestyle. That is destructive to the kid. And you look at kids. I remember when I would stand, I would hold the door open as the kids are walking down the hall, because I was at the very end of the hall in my classroom, and they would walk down the hall and they have their earbuds in. 80% of the kids have earbuds, right?
Yeah.
And they're just looking at the ground.
Yeah.
Their faces are blank.
Yeah.
But you can see tension on some of their faces. The rest of it appears to be despair. And I'm wondering to myself, and I'm asking my son, he's he's great to bounce ideas off of. And I've concluded that I just think that these kids experience despair. And these are just average kids. I'm not talking about the LGBT crowd.
I know.
I'm talking about just the average kids.
I've noticed.
And they're walking down the hall, and there's just vacancy. It looks like despair to me.
What do you expect when they're showing children those videos of, dehumanizing, like our country and like making us look like we're monsters, destroying the planet? How would you feel if you were a kid watching that? I have to go. I have to pick up my daughter from school. I was gonna tell you I had like 5 minutes. I'll give you 5 more minutes.
Oh, well, that's
to wrap up.
Do you have any other questions? Like, what's your
one of the questions that I had is, like, I hear you're friends with Ray Gadd. Is that true?
I know Ray. In fact, I just talked to him yesterday morning. We were having an issue with the school that we couldn't get resolution with the administration, and I called him up, and I'm just like, only because I think you've got a management issue am I bringing this to you, right? And he took my call, okay, and which was, it's unusual. He doesn't usually take my calls, so I was very thankful because it was an emergent issue. My relationship with Ray is, he helped me out, and he took the time to listen to my opinions as we were starting this public school thing with my son.
Okay.
And I think Ray our if you want to call it a relate, I think we have a relationship. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say that. I mean, it's not a friendship. We don't go hanging out on Friday nights. I mean, I've never seen Ray socially.
Okay.
He invites my family every summer. Well, the last 2 summers, how's that, right? He invites us to have a 4-hour discussion in his office during the summer times. The fact that I'm running for school board, who knows if this meeting will happen this year?
Yeah.
I hope to. But he just sits and listens to all of us. I mean, my 10-year-old daughter is the last meeting, or 15-year-old son, or my wife, or me. And I think Ray looks at me as like a sentinel. It's like, I'm because I just don't, I'm not going to be quiet. Okay. So when I'm seeing the injustice, I'm seeing children with anxiety from all the woke crap. I just can't sit idly by. And I think Ray knows that about me.
Yeah.
And so I think Ray appreciates that he is going to get the unvarnished truth from me. And he appreciates how I've educated myself on the social side of things, and the cultural side is really the big deal, because I've given up on politics 3 years ago. I realized that politicians, I don't have any faith in any of them. I've been in DC. I've been in these congressmen's office. The Heritage Foundation flew Amy and I up there a few years ago to try and convince some of these people. I don't know if we were successful or not, but they taught me, right? They convinced me that they're useless. That politicians and politics is just a mechanism. It's a tool.
Yes.
What really matters is culture.
Yes.
And the unique American culture is dying. It's going away. And that's the thing I think Ray saw, that I'm the only person I think he's met that looks at life, looks at this that way. So when I give him feedback, I think he knows I'm being honest with him. And he doesn't, I don't think in fact, I'm sure he doesn't act on all the stuff I'm telling him, and as far as the criticism that Ray receives, look, he deserves criticism for some things. He screwed up on things, I mean, I think Kurt has screwed up a whole lot more. But I think Kurt and Ray are their own people. I don't think that they're one is the puppet of another. Either way, I don't think so. But I think that Ray also, he doesn't appreciate that this cultural social justice thing is going to be the end of us, because now they've got the kids. It's not a passing thing. This is when you get the kids, now you've got intergenerational control, cultural control. And Tip O'Neill, politics is downstream of culture. Okay, he was kind of a scummy guy, but he was right about that. Right, he was the Speaker of the House in the Democrats in like the early '80s, and he and Reagan would spar. But that's where I see things mattering, and I don't think Ray appreciates that the classrooms have become the battlefield. Yes, which we have got to, for a little bit, we've got to take that battlefield back, and then let's turn it back into a tranquil place where kids can be kids. So I want to shrink this bureaucracy, and I want to eradicate cultural Marxism from our schools. The wokeness is just the latest iteration of it. Yes. And as far as Ray goes, we don't agree on many things. He's kind enough to listen to me. He has no obligation to pay any attention to me. I hope that I am a benefit to him, to try and fix things. That is really the sum total of our relationship. And I'm thankful for him in some ways, and I'll bitch about him in other ways. Yeah, it's like anything else. I'm sure he's fine with that. I know this is a personal thing, but I know they're all human. Everyone's a human. Everyone makes mistakes. I'm sure there's good in everybody. But I was just curious on what your relationship with him was. And so there's that. I try to see the humanity in everybody. And sometimes to a fault, because my wife will punch me in the arm and say, "Are you dummy? This person is evil," you know. Um,
I get
and
the same
you know,
thing with my husband.
it-
My husband's like, but anyway, thank you for taking time out of your day for like getting this. I know we could talk for hours. I can see
well,
that.
you know what? Maybe we do a part two, and maybe grill me some. Come back. Let's get some hard questions that are like, you know, make
Okay.
me sweat a little.
All right. All right. Well, I
I mean,
gotta go.
not that I'm criticizing you. This was
No,
been
no.
really fun, but you know, this is there's sharp elbows in this game, and you know, you need to get me ready for the mean people.
Absolutely. We could set something up. I'm not going to be here for a week, but definitely I'll think
That's
about doing a part 2.
Great.
All right.
Well,
Thank you
thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank you, Steve. Have a good
Bye
one.
bye. You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Bye.
And that's it for today. I will probably end up making another interview with Steve. Also, anybody who's watching, if you know someone who's running who would like to be on my show, just send me an email. I'll post the link on the description below. Bye, guys.